Hi.
Hi.
I'm your substitute professor this evening. Ronnie Fleming could not be here for his presentation on Pussy Boots. I will subsequently be talking to you today about, I feel, a very important subject, group dynamics and the application of modern popular rhetoric. Several of the students who have taken this course have subsequently renamed it to what they deem a more accurate title: Eating Shit and Giving It Back. Dealing with crowd work, heckling, and bombing in stand-up comedy. A little about me. I am Derek Minto. I am a professor of stand-up comedy. I've been doing it for 14 years. I am a local hero. City Paper's Best Comic, City Paper's Opus Age, and also Best Looking Comic in the City. That's one that I wrote in, but I voted for myself, and you can't stop me. I've hosted and produced hundreds of stand-up shows and events, and I have bombed in every conceivable way possible. And not just in stand-up comedy, also sketch comedy, improvisation, storytelling, pretty much everything, definitely writing things on the internet. I have seen it all. And I have also watched thousands of people subsequently do the same thing. And I've also been in a numerous amount of brawls, kerfuffles, and crowds that did not attach a number because there's some legal stuff with that. I have an album that you're all now legally obligated to own as part of this course. You have already been charged. All right, let's move on. All right, let's see here. Modern stand-up comedy is dependent on audiences, which is something we bizarrely figured out only through COVID. That's right, that's when stand-up comics figured out that we had taken all the audiences in the country for granted, when suddenly we were all stuck on Zoom shows performing to the black, deep, dark ichor of the void. It was truly a hellish experience. It really seems dumb that we figured it out just now, but stand-up comedy is very much a dynamic art where you relate to an audience, and it's a live act, right? So in the past, and subsequently since COVID, crowd work and your interaction with the audience has developed a much larger expectation. It is now encouraged by both audiences and venues alike. All right, this is the reality of stand-up performing conditions. Stand-up comedy does not, it rarely ever happens in an actual bubble. Most stand-up comedy happens in clubs in front of a live audience, and oftentimes conditions are imperfect. There's a lot of things going on. Drunk people, hurricanes, Steeler games, all of them. It really ruins stand-up comedy. And there really is a complete dysfunction or a lack of understanding of this. Most of you have most of the stand-up comedy you've probably seen and or viewed. Thank you for getting here. Is viewed on television. What most of you don't end up seeing is the fact that most of those shows have 60 minutes or at least 30 to 60 minutes of warm-up acts. Everyone in the audience is there to see that comic, but most shows aren't performed that way. Most of the time it's a bunch of random people going to a random place just because they want to see something funny. And that's not always what happens. So subsequently, tape specials present a view or an expectation of stand-up that can't always be met in a live performance. So what are the conditions that we want for a good live stand-up performance? An attentive audience not limited by any distractions, TV, environments, venue, who are there with intent to both see comedy and laugh, aka have a good time, and this was written by me. Derek quote, and there's a small one at the bottom of the book. All right, here's some places that have great stages. Wow, the arcade made it. So good, so good. Comedy clubs, theaters, distilleries, and breweries all have places, a set area where you can clearly see and hear the performer that are, for the most part, not full of distractions. Here are some of the best places in the city. Here's a list of all the awful things that have happened here. Every single one of these is true. Just wait till people stop laughing and then I'll just say it. All right, good job. Good job. All right, yeah. These are all real. The Canadian family reunion was by far one of the worst ones. I tried to get them to abduct me and give them free health care, and they laughed too hard at my joke. that one hurt a lot. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. All right, crowd work. Crowd work has become a very important part of stand-up comedy. Who here has seen at least one reel or TikTok of someone doing crowd work? Just go, woo! Woo! Yeah, there you go. Even if you didn't want to see it, you probably now know who Matt Rife is really what it is. I'm not here to talk shit about Matt Rife. I'm just here to talk about crowd work. Crowd work generally refers to material generated through interactions with an audience. It is that dynamic that you play with. It can be a risky strategy, however. Crowd work does not always work. But it's very popular, like I said. Good. So it can add material to your set. It can be a good way to provide padding during a period of your show. Sometimes when you do stand-up comedy, something else might be happening at the same time. Like, for instance, like a check drop, or, someone randomly coming in. Okay, it's just the door. Okay, it must have heard me. But those of you who have seen bad crowd work before, if it does not look natural, it is one of the single most awkward things to watch in the entire world. It's like watching a one-man band just fail an improvisation. It is truly wretched to watch when it goes poorly. So, elements to consider when you decide to do crowd work, right? What are you going for? Like, is this the right environment? Is the crowd appropriate for your set? Do you feel confident doing it? Would the audience actually be receptive to someone talking to them? And am I doing this just to get a good video? Is another question to consider. Most of these questions boil down to one very simple idea. Will I be an asshole for doing this? Will I ruin this show and other people's sets because I've decided that I don't want to do written material? That is an important question to consider. Stand-up is a kind of a very selfish act in that you are one person going up in front of people and doing this thing. So it naturally draws, narcissists and ego-driven human beings. It does. It just does. But sometimes it's very easy to forget about, hey, someone has to go on after me after I've done 15 minutes of crowd work and pissed everyone off. So, something to consider. Crowd work. So, here's a breakdown of a cycle of generally how crowd work works. Generally. This is just my personal observation of this cycle. I've looked at a few other things. But first up, starts out with actualizing, getting information from the audience. One of the best tools you can do with this is you then repeat that information, sometimes in a snarky tone, or whatever tone you prefer. You offer your perspective on what they've said. You connect to them, to yourself in some way, or with something that everyone knows, or something from the show in some way that connects it back to what's going on. Or then you even connect it to some piece of material you have. And then the cycle kind of begins again. That is the general cycle of crowd work. You might watch crowd work and see this and be like, I could do that too now. I have the secret code. Just think about it. You could be at a board meeting right now and be like, hey Jerry, where do you work? And well, that might probably be a good question. We all work at the same place. Here's just some general tips that if you ever do decide to do crowd work in your subsequent life, gathering information from the crowd. It's also nice to, if you can, observe the crowd ahead of time to pick out things that might be useful. It's really good to start confident, but then relax it back a little bit. Because it shows that you've got their attention, and now you're becoming comfortable with them. Be willing to acknowledge how it's going. There is nothing worse when you stay in the confidence mode and you never leave it and you eat shit on stage. It is awful. There is an idea of what's something called building a village, which you may have seen if you've watched long-form crowd work before, in which you build people in the audience and then you build them up, you find out about them, and then you connect them together. Like, Jerry's a plumber over here. This guy's got a pool. This is also the part where I should admit I'm not good at crowd work. Those who can't, right? Anyway, heckling. The fun of discourse with a live audience. Heckling is a very interesting problem for stand-up comics. The one thing I will tell you, and this is true, you'll see lots of videos of it online. Most shows, people don't heckle. It doesn't happen as much as you think. Most audiences are there to have a good time, and most people who do heckle are usually told by their friends to, shut the fuck up, Gary. or whoever, you know, Garolina, I don't know, whatever. This is one of my favorite quotes from Patton Oswalt. Hecklers do not make a show memorable, they prevent the show from being a fucking show. Hecklers have a wide variety of reasons, like why it happens. But one of them is they either want to be part of the show, they're thinking they're helping, they are drunk, and the most dangerous one is they want attention. All right, how to deal with hecklers. The most important thing to do, and this is something that's a general stagecraft principle, reviewers of you who performed before have been on stage, time dilates when you are on stage. What this is feeling like for me right now is just happening to the rest of you in real time, where all the gears in my head are flying off the fucking tables right now. So remember to always take time. Take your time, anyone who's heckling you. Most hecklers are disabled, or you can disable them very quickly without much effort. Because usually the audience is agreeing with you. They are there to see you, not some dickhead. So, do not pounce on a heckler. This is one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in my stand-up comedy career. Was there was a show, and oh man, I just noticed there's a steel drum there. That's fucking awesome. They told me it was going to be here, but I didn't see it until now. I'm sorry. Cool. Anyway, I saw a show, and the show was going pretty good, but there was these two girls in the front row, like right there, and the third comic gets on stage, and they both pull out their phones. Just to tell you how old of a thing this is when it happened, they had a BlackBerry in their hands, right? It's a type of phone, for those of you. It wasn't an actual delicious phone. But anyway, they're on it together, because that's what people used to do. They used to share their BlackBerries. If you weren't there, it definitely happened that way. Anyway, and this comic is on stage, and he just loses his shit, and he just, without like any prompt, he's like, "What the fuck are you two girls doing? Get the fuck off your phone!" And you hear screaming and fucking yelling, and the girl just turns around her phone, and she shows him a picture of the comic that's on stage. She's like, "We were just looking you up. We thought you were cute." And it was the most awkward moment. Because it's like watching a sibling get screamed at for something they didn't really do, or a punishment beyond what was actually happening. It's very awkward. So yeah, it's a way you can lose an audience. You have to kind of let the comics subsequently make them, or the audience or heckler into a villain. Like I said, it helps to repeat what members say back to them, because it will oftentimes make them sound very stupid. Sometimes you can actually agree with them, and you can kind of play off it. It's like, wow, you got a really valid point there. I can definitely work. So there's 4 basic types of hecklers that usually kind of come out of these situations. One, someone who's just drunk and lost all sense of decorum and just thinks the stand-up is just talking to the audience member. This is the most common. There is a commenter. Usually this person, they're not necessarily interested in helping. They want to tag your jokes, or they're the kind of person that will say the punchline before the punchline. Well, some jokes, telegraph it a little bit better than others, but this person is pretty much also oblivious in a way in what they are doing. Also, if you've ever said anything in an audience, oftentimes most people have heard you say it around you, and also the comments. Sometimes we just ignore it, sometimes we don't. The helper is another person who thinks they're being part of the act by making it better. The helper and the commenter are kind of the same, but the worst is the bulldozer. This is a person who is determined to fuck up your stand-up comedy, and out of all things, they think they're funnier than you. And sometimes they are. That's good. So this is the question: when is it time to rip somebody a new one, or when is it time to be an asshole? When you have to give them a little bit of time. But once you do, you can really pretty much let go. It's always good. You want to make sure that the audience is almost always going to be on your side. If it's a really bad show, I've never been booed off of stage. I've been silenced off of stage, which I think's worse in a way. I know the worst one is to be pitied off of stage. That is the deepest. It's when the audience feels so bad for you that they're like, oh, hey, man, like, oh, you, come on, you did it, like, let's go. The worst example of that I ever saw was a guy went up at the Improv, and he got up, and it was very clear he made a very huge mistake, and he got on stage. And he literally went like, hey guys, how we doing tonight? Hey, what's going on, Pittsburgh? What's shaking? How are you? Pittsburgh, right? And it was this moment where you watched this guy and you went, oh shit, you never got past the intro and right in your set, did you? And I watched an audience, some guy in the audience stood up after about a minute of it and went, hey man, nice shoes. And they talked about his shoes, which no one could see, for like 3 minutes, and then they played them off. And I've never seen that man ever again. Anyway, that is not a really example of this. It's a hard question to answer. Usually when you feel like you've been pushed beyond your limits and you're angry, is a lot of it. But trying to stay in control is the best thing that you can do. Going full force, crazy, batshit, ballistic on somebody really has to be earned when it comes. The dongle.
Dongle.
Yeah. Like Max Hendricks would explode over something. Surprised the amount of you that responded to that. That was fucking crazy. Anyway, alright, let's move on, I guess. Alright, bombing! The fun of silent public humiliation. Bombing is when your material does not go over well with the audience, and you subsequently get no laughs. Some comics refer to single jokes sometimes as bombing. When this says up here, everyone bombs, every stand-up comic you have ever seen has at one point went on stage and ate shit. That is, if anyone ever tells you that they're a stand-up comic and they haven't bombed, they either one, they do not know what bombing actually is, or two, are the most self-unaware person that's ever lived. It is not a thing. There's no one. I've seen the best comics in the city of Pittsburgh. I've seen national touring comics not do well. It just happens sometimes. What makes bombing so particularly hard is stand-up, like I said, is a very singular act. You're putting yourself out there. So it's like basically having a bunch of people go, ah, fuck you. Not today. Like, that's what makes stand-up art. It's a weird dynamic that you have to take from it. This is the only thing I can tell you to do is just try to embrace that it's happening and find the humor in it. That is the best way that you can deal with it. But I will also tell you, bombing has this weird magical way of every single time you find you will bomb, the next time you do bomb, you will find a way to hurt yourself again in a new dynamic way. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. But if you like laughing at yourself and you find yourself hilarious in that way, it's pretty fun. Like, this is the other important thing. You do not have to finish your time, or you do not have to wait to go out on a laugh. Another one of the most painful parts of stand-up is watching someone desperately trying to end their set on a laugh. Just end it, man. Like, it's okay. Like, don't do it. Just no. Yeah, okay. Don't do that. This is the thing. I mean, the other thing I found that really, truly helps with bombing is getting back up on stage and trying again. It's the only way to kind of clean your palate. You might not go great the next time either, but maybe that experience will be behind you. Yeah, knowing this too shall pass. It will eventually end. See, bombing feels like you're gonna die. Like, it feels like you are gonna physically die on stage, but after you do it enough times, you realize that's not what's gonna happen. And most people don't think about it or remember it. That's the thing that's like maybe the hardest part as a stand-up. Unless you do it really spectacularly bad. Yeah, I can think of a few I remember. Anyway, that's the end of this. Thank you for listening and the money. That's my album that you all purchased, and now there's me in a hot tub on cocaine.